I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing DC Superheroes United from CMON Games. DC Superheroes United is a 1-to-4 player cooperative game that continues the line of games that CMON started with Marvel United. Marvel United has had 3 full campaigns, 3 full systems. They've also had multiple standalone retail sets, and the entire system is basically a cooperative game where you're going to be controlling various heroes, although there are so many ways to play with expansions. There's a lot of ways to play the expansion. Let's focus on the basic game mode here. You're going to be controlling various heroes. You're going to have a villain, one of these villains in play. You're going to put them on the villain dashboard, and then you're trying to deal with the various things in the locations around the board. You're going to have 6 different locations that are going to be around the board, operating as a little circle, all filled with various civilians and thugs that you need to go ahead and take out. Because if you take out enough thugs, and you take out enough civilians, and you clear enough threats from the locations, those 3 things, threats, thugs, and civilians, if you deal with all those things, or specifically if you deal with 2 of those things, the ultimate villain you are facing off against becomes vulnerable to you finally attacking them and taking them out. Until you do that, they're not vulnerable. But also, as soon as you do one of those things, as soon as you rescue enough civilians, they become under pressure and they start activating faster, which means you need to try to time everything you're doing to try to stay ahead of all the things the villain is throwing at you, to try to accomplish 2 of the 3 goals, hopefully in tangent, roughly the same time. You can really work on the timing of the game, is going to give you a leg up, and then controlling your unique heroes in the game while you tackle the unique villains. That's the basic premise of the game. A key aspect of the game that's going to make the game very compelling is the idea of that shared teamwork. You're going to have a card line where the villain is going to play cards into the timeline to activate all the things that they're doing. But then when it's your turn, you go ahead and play a card in the timeline, and it would be a circle around the board. This I'm just throwing this out so you see. You're going to throw a card down, you'll do your effect, and you'll generate movement and heroic actions and attacking on these cards, which is great. But then the next character after you gets to follow it up with another card. They play a card on the timeline, they get to do their ability, they get to do their action. This is a wild action, but they benefit from the card you played before it. Not all cards played before it, but the most recent card played is going to generate actions not just for you on your turn, but for your teammates on their turns as well, which gives this game a healthy dose of teamwork as you try to talk to each other and figure out, hey, on my turn, I can hit the villain twice, but I can't get to him. Do you, the person before me, do you have a card that will help you move? Because if you move this turn, I can benefit from that movement, and you kind of have that cinematic feel of like players teaming up and tagging each other and helping each other and throwing a hero across the map as you lend your movement to theirs, or as you do a heroic action that they can benefit from as well. The game's going to have that large sense of teamwork in the system in general. This is all basic, the United system of games. None of this is specific to DC United. This is just the general United system of games. I've covered it on my channel extensively. You can find a ton of playthroughs from the various Marvel United series. You can find a playthrough of DC United. There should be more playthroughs before the campaign ends. I should note, if I haven't already, this is a prototype, all rules and components subject to change, and I'll have a link to the crowdfunding campaign down below. I should also say, because CMON has done sponsored content with us in the past, that this is not a sponsored video, but in general, this is all true of the general United system. As far as DC United, what is this one bringing to the table? And the answer is mostly the same, but with more. Every time that CMON has done the United system, they've added more to it. The first time round, they had Marvel United, plain and simple, and overall it's been an incredibly well-received system. Don't get me wrong, it's not necessarily a game for everyone. The game is on the lighter side, but there have been people who have taken that and embraced it and found the game that works for them, their groups, whether it's family gaming, whether it's casual gaming, whether it's whatever it is. There have been a lot of people who've enjoyed this game for what it is, but you do have to know what it is. It is definitely a lighter game. This is not a giant dungeon crawler. This isn't even Zombicide, anything like that. This is a lighter experience, which is about that sense of teamwork as you cooperate together to take down the villain. But overall, the base game was originally very well received. One of the biggest pieces of critical feedback that the game got from myself and from others is that the heroes didn't feel distinct enough. The heroes had a combination of symbols, and sure, CMON said, oh, well, it's balanced around, if you're Hulk, you have more might. If you're Superman, you have, well, not Superman, there was no Superman back then, but if you're someone heroic, you have more heroic actions. If you're someone fast, I don't remember all the characters, Quicksilver or whatnot, you have more speed actions, movement actions. So the idea that the action economy of the heroic actions, the fighting, and then the movement, those were differently distributed depending on the hero, but the heroes didn't feel distinct enough. Each hero in the original system had 3 cards that were distinct cards that had text-based abilities that made that character stand out. And in any given game, maybe you saw 1, maybe 2, sometimes if you're really lucky, you saw 3 times in the game where you actually felt like your hero as opposed to just a generic character who has a very cool chibi-like miniature but didn't feel distinctly different. I love Marvel United. I've always loved Marvel United, but I very much had that complaint from the get-go. The heroes did not feel distinct. I chose them because I wanted to put a different miniature on the table. I didn't care at all about what they did because they didn't feel like playing their heroes. That's when they came out with Marvel United X-Men. And CMON heard the feedback, and they addressed that feedback, and they did go ahead and add something called starting hand cards. They added starting hand cards, which are cards that start in your hand that have something unique about your character, which kind of is the same system they already had, just a drop more so. Now you're guaranteed to start with something that is unique to you. So you have a guarantee that's in some way, shape, or form you'll feel like your character, plus the cards you draw, and then between those you have a little bit more of a sense of identity for your character. Not too many starting hand cards. You don't want to have the game scripted from the get-go, but you want to give the people playing the game the opportunity to feel like you're playing as, I don't know, Wolverine or Cyclops or whoever. And so the second Marvel United system, or Marvel United X-Men, was going to be very focused on X-Men and gave you more reasons for the heroes to feel distinct. It still wasn't enough, but it did give you more reasons to feel distinct. By the way, if this feels more like a review of the entire Marvel United system as opposed to DC United, you're not wrong. We're going to be getting into a little bit of all of it. But past that, they then came out with Marvel United Multiverse. And Marvel United Multiverse was the best version of the system yet, because they took all the feedback they already had, but they sat there and said, we're going to give you equipment cards. Equipment cards you can see on the table over here, by the way, because everything we're talking about so far has been incorporated into DC Superheroes United. So from the get-go, they're taking everything they learned from the system and putting it into the system, which means they have all the stuff. They have the starting hand cards, they have the distinct cards to begin with, they have the equipment that the Marvel United Multiverse gave you, and that equipment so far, to me, was the best version of making the heroes feel distinct, with the caveat that not all heroes had equipment. A lot of them didn't, or a lot of them only had one piece, but if you had the hero who had 2 or 3 pieces of equipment, you actually felt more distinct because your equipment could be used, there were ways you could recharge it, and so there were ways to feel more like you were actually leaning into what your hero did. Now, one thing I haven't talked about is the villains have felt great from the get-go. The villains have felt very distinct. They give you unique challenges. The villains really feel like you're fighting someone who feels totally different every single time. Across all the heroes that the Marvel United system has, across all the villains that the Marvel United system has, they all, I can't say all, but from the ones I played at least, and I played through a lot of them, they have generally felt like a distinct villain who really throws their own unique threat onto the table. Some being a little on the simple side, some getting significantly more complicated, but they have all felt very distinct. The villains have always had a great job in the United system. CMON has done the villains justice, and the heroes have been a slow catch-up game all along. But again, in Marvel United Multiverse, the equipment was the best addition to make the heroes feel the most distinct so far. I still think they do not feel as distinct as the villains do, but every single step was a step closer, a step more towards feeling like you're actually playing as Iron Man, as opposed to whatever card that has a few Iron Man related abilities on it. Meanwhile, along the way, these systems have added a lot of things. Marvel United Multiverse added a unique solo mode, the best solo mode to date. Again, that is going to be included in DC Superheroes United. These are the superhero and supervillain modes that you can place off against. The expansions give a ton of different ways to play the game. Again, you can check out a variety of playthroughs on the channel to get a sense of the tons of different ways that CMON has given you to play and engage with this game, to make it your own system. And that's where we're going to go ahead and talk about DC Superheroes United. And it's worth saying that until we see the crowdfunding campaign, until we see all the things they unlock, the various expansions, the various game modes, I won't have a full picture of what this looks like, because every system they've had so far has introduced more and more things to make the game feel different. They usually have a few modes where you can play through a sequence of campaigns. They usually have different modes that'll give you like different versus modes or different ways to play against each other or with each other. The expansions often add a lot of dynamic ways to enjoy and embrace the United systems, and so this review is only encompassing, well, aside from the fact that it's somewhat encompassing the entire system until now, it's only encompassing the base set of DC Superheroes United, and it's not going to be talking about all the things that come out during the course of the campaign, because I don't have access to those yet. But to that end, DC Superheroes United so far incorporates everything we've seen done well in the Marvel United system, but so far it also adds a little bit more. And the 2 new things that I've seen, and it's possible I've missed small rules, tweaks, or adjustments, but the 2 main things that I've seen are first of all going to be the concept of an under pressure difference in how a villain acts. Whether it's on the villain cards or whether it's on the villain dashboard, there's now a new concept for when the villain is going to operate under pressure. And I realize now I say new concept. If I've missed this in any of the other previous Marvel United systems, systems, then I may have missed it. I don't recall playing against something that was different in the previous under pressure modes. So you might draw a villain card that says, if the villain is under pressure, do this thing instead of that thing, which sometimes it's just about a difficulty of escalation, something more difficult. Sometimes it's about changing the behavior of the actual character themselves. If you've watched our playthrough against the cheetah, you'll see that cheetah, once she's under pressure, stops trying to engage with the heroes and starts trying to run away from the heroes, which is a fascinating concept as far as the way the villains can feel dynamic based on how the game is going. And again, a reminder, in the game you're trying to accomplish at least 2 of the 3 goals. Once you accomplish your first one, the villain is now under pressure. Once you accomplish the second one, you can actually go ahead and start dealing damage to them. So this adjustment, this change that forces the villain to adapt to what the heroes have done so far is a very nice and welcome change from the current system, and I think it adds more dynamicism to the game. I'll also say that they add new cards that go into the storyline. When a hero plays their card, let's go ahead and grab a deck of cards over here. Let's see what we got. When a hero plays their card, there are 2 new card types. There's going to be a basic card that goes in the storyline. There's going to be a basic ability card that goes in the storyline, and then you're going to have this type of card, and there's 2 types over here, but a card that has an effect in the storyline, an ongoing effect. In the case of these yellow cards over here, the way these work is they're going to go ahead and be flipped to do an effect. So once they are in the storyline, at any given point, you have the opportunity to flip that card and do an effect on the card, which gives you, again, some greater sense of dynamicism within the storyline. And then I'm realizing Superman over here has both these on the table. The other card type is one that just gives you an ongoing ability. Invulnerability. When this card is played into the storyline, you may ignore 1 damage during each villain turn. If you do, you may punch in that location. Superman effectively is going to get more and more powerful as he plays cards. His cards will let him do a lot more in the game once they are in the storyline, although many villains will deal with that by trying to flip cards face down in the storyline. So you have that dynamicism between the characters, but those 2 new card types, cards that go into the storyline and you flip it for an effect, or cards that go into the storyline and have an ongoing effect, those are 2 new things to the DC Superheroes United system, and it further leans into heroes feeling more distinct. Every single version of the United system consistently has brought a new improvement to making the heroes feel more different, and with the combination of the under pressure aspect, they're also making the villains feel more dynamic, and I was already happy with the villains. To that end, let's talk about the villains in DC Superheroes United, because there's 4 villains currently here. Again, this is the base box. I assume this is the box that'll go to retail. The crowdfunding campaign will have a bunch more, so this is just kind of a brief coverage of the 4 current villains. We'll start with the most basic and most straightforward, which is going to be Cheetah. Cheetah's main aspect over here is she wants to avoid being hit. So she's very good at running after heroes and dealing damage to multiple heroes in one spot, and all her cards focus around that, but then she actually is a little evasive herself. When heroes move into her location, she runs away from them, and once she's under pressure, she's drastically trying to move away from the heroes, which really requires a lot of teamwork to be able to combine and work together to be able to take her out. You have to be mindful of the fact that she's constantly trying to move away from you, trying to escape damage, and because of that, she's a difficult villain to pin down, but if you do team up, if you use the right abilities, if you figure it out, and again, you can watch our gameplay for more on that one over there, then you'll see that she can be pinned down. But her evasiveness is the thing that's going to make her interesting. Then you're going to have Joker over here. Joker's going to be, well, speaking of evasive, Joker's going to have a little Joker token hidden along amongst the thugs. And that's going to make him hard to find. You're going to have a special objective card that you're trying to find him multiple times before you can start taking him out. He has a full under pressure mode over here where he activates differently with his BAM once he's under pressure. But his whole aspect is they kind of hide Joker within the population, which is very thematic to the villain and results in a very interesting gameplay. I may or may not have a gameplay on the channel for Joker, but you can check out 2 gameplays from Dice Tower did a gameplay of the Joker, as well as Man vs. Meeple, I believe, did a gameplay of the Joker if you want to check those out. And again, I might have a gameplay on the channel. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I like this game. But anyways, past that, we have Lex Luthor. Now, Lex Luthor, again, is a different interesting one, because you have to be mindful of the fact that he's going to be trying to rescue and defeat thugs and civilians himself. Lex is not your typical bad guy. He's technically a servant of the law, just his own law that he creates, and so he's constantly trying to take out enemies, but you have to be mindful that he doesn't, or you'll lose the game. If he eliminates the last characters in the game, you want to be very careful about that, and so you have to be very careful about how he operates so that you don't give him the opportunity to actually engage and rescue other civilians or thugs along the way. And the tricky part is when he KOs you, he's going to do his BAM effect again, which means whenever you die, it's even more likely that he'll go ahead and deal with them. So he's in a weird place where he's helping you, but not really, and you need to be careful that he's not the one doing the final moves. So it's a fascinating mechanic to play against, and again, if you want to check out a gameplay of this, you can check out One Stop Co-op Shop, who did a demo of that one, of Lex Luthor. And then lastly, we have Darkseid over here. And Darkseid, we should have a playthrough for you on the channel as well, but Darkseid over here is going to be, and I don't know when that one will go up, but we'll have a playthrough for you, but Darkseid is Darkseid operates differently in the sense that he, like Lex Luthor's dealing with the civilians and the thugs, Darkseid is dealing with the threats. He's going to be moving around the board. The threats are no longer yours to get rid of. You can't get rid of threats anymore. Rather, Darkseid himself is going to be getting rid of the threats, and you need to be very careful about how he wanders around the board, hits a card, flips it, and then gets rid of it, because that will be a way that he takes over the game. And so again, you have 4 different villains over here, all operating drastically differently in terms of the way they're going to impact the game state and the different types of things they're going to work with, whether they're fleeing from you, whether they're hiding from you, or whether they're helping you but kind of hurting you at the same time. They all offer drastically different gameplay options. And that's, I guess, where the review part is going to come in. To me, I love the Marvel United series because, in general, if you follow my content, you'll know that I give Marvel United a 5 out of 5. I think it's an excellent game. It's a game that started off good for me and then just continued to grow over time. I do not think it's the heaviest game, and I do not think it's going to be a game that's right for everyone, but it's a game that I have managed to play solo and enjoyed it. I've managed to play with my kids and enjoyed it. I've managed to play with my friends and enjoyed it. Half the gameplays, and more than that, most of the gameplays you can see on the channel are going to be me playing it with my friends and having a good time, and it is such a good time. It is a beer and pretzels guilty pleasure game. This is not a game that's going to be for everyone, because if you're looking for an incredibly tactical survival game or whatnot, this isn't that. There's tactics here, there's strategy here, there are difficult villains here, there's ways to ramp up the difficulty, there's different challenges you can go on that'll make the game. You can make this game your own in so many different ways. But ultimately, the combination of simplicity, accessibility, variability, the way you're going to be able to just combine different things to give you a different experience every single time, I love the Marvel United system, and to me it is a 5 out of 5 game. And DC Superheroes United is doing nothing to change my mind on that. This is bringing you a new IP, a new theme, and as much as I probably am more of a Marvel fanboy than a DC fanboy at this point, at the end of the day, Batman still is one of the best superheroes of all time, plus the lineup they have in general. There's a lot of good heroes to deal with over here, plus, I mean, Henry Cavill over here as well, because it'll always be Henry Cavill to me. But you have a great lineup of the DC universe, which I like. I enjoy that variety, I enjoy having more stuff, and of course you can go ahead and mix and match what you want, and have Iron Man facing off against Batman, 2 billionaires going toe-to-toe, and seeing which one, well, I guess you actually could play toe-to-toe in some of the game modes. But so the IP aspect is a nice change. We have had tons of Marvel, we've had X-Men, Marvel, Fantastic Four, all those things, and now we have DC entering the mix, which I appreciate that from that sense. It doesn't make the game better or worse, it's just a different theme thrown into it, or a similar theme but with different, you know what I'm talking about. As far as the gameplay changes are everything I like about Marvel United plus more changes. Honestly, the biggest critique I have over the Marvel United system at this point is the fact that all these changes are iterative changes to each system that make all the previous systems feel a drop worse. Playing base Marvel United at this point feels like a slight step back. The heroes don't feel as defined. You don't have the equipment. You don't have all these starting hand cards. So to me, the biggest crime that the Marvel United system has is that the changes are all small and incremental, and feels like each one is like, okay, we have a new campaign here. We have a new version of the system. So what small tweak can we do to make the game better? And those small tweaks, unfortunately, make all your previous heroes feel less fun and less satisfying. And sure, they do things like throw in generic equipment card that any hero can use, but that's not satisfying. That doesn't make a hero feel distinct. That gives you balance to the equipment system, but the complaint you're trying to solve is the heroes feeling distinct, and generic equipment's not going to do so. I dearly hope that CMON at some point makes the heroes backwards compatible. I don't even care if they charge for it. By all means, charge for it. Give you new hero cards, give you equipment cards, do what you need to do to make the heroes in all their games backwards compatible and feel brought up to date. Because my biggest frustration each time they come out with a new game is each one pushes the old ones further away from being satisfying, and kind of pushes you into like, well, I guess I'll play the multiverse and DC, because once I go to X-Men and the original base, they're just not as satisfying anymore. So the changes feel a bit incremental, which is frustrating, but they are at least changes in the right direction, and I am a fan of that. They make the game more engaging on a system that I already like, make the heroes feel more interesting to actually play as. Playing as Wonder Woman or Batman or Superman are going to feel drastically different at this point, and that's not something I used to be able to say. I think there's probably still room for making things even better, maybe, but honestly, the gap from where we are now from the original game is a big gap and a welcome improvement to the set. So for me, DC Superheroes United is everything good that I like about the Marvel United system, with continued improvements as they have continued to do throughout the line. And so for me, it's just another 5 out of 5. If I like the original game and this is just better, that's where we are. It's going to be a welcome addition to the Marvel United series of games. And that's basically my review over here. It's everything I like about Marvel United and then a little bit more, which for me is not a bad thing. In any case, I hope you got some use out of this video. It's kind of a little bit half a review of DC Superheroes United and half a conversation around the general Marvel United timeline and how it's all played out. ultimately, I'm a fan of this game. I like what they've done, and I'm excited to see what else is being added throughout the campaign in terms of the gameplays, expansions, all the other things that they have generally done to make the game even more engaging or varied as possible. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.